This is Voices in Validation, brought to you by IVT Network. IVT Network is your expert source for life science regulatory knowledge. Voices in Validation brings you the best in validation and compliance topics. We interview industry experts from pharma, biotech, med devices, and laboratories. Here is the host of Voices in Validation, Stacey.
Thank you, and welcome to another episode of Voices in Validation. This week we're going to talk about digital transformation. And has our pharma industry really arrived at its digital moment? So I'm sure most of you are very much up to speed on digital transformation here in the pharmaceutical industry and understand that it's crucial for better patient care, cost effectiveness, greater transparency, improved production, and drug development. And across the pharmaceutical industry, companies are, of course, at varying stages in adoption of digital technologies. But one thing is clear, during this recent COVID pandemic, we have seen a significant acceleration in this process, pushing us forward by some counts 3 to even 5 years. So where are we now as an industry? And what are companies doing to move toward a strategic digital transformation plan? Here to help answer those questions and many more today is our guest, Chinmoy Roy. Welcome, Chinmoy. So great to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Stacey. I'm glad to be here.
I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about this particular topic, Chinmoy, as it is one that falls inside your specialty area. And as I was preparing for this and thinking about this topic, I came across something in an article that says it's predicted that the pharmaceutical industry will be among the top sectors to see the largest growth and greatest impact from digital transformation. And as I alluded to in the beginning of this episode, we've really seen that accelerate by dramatically due to the pandemic. So what is digital transformation and what does it entail as it pertains to this sector?
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacey, for inviting me today. And that is a very good question. So let me begin by saying that digitalization and digital transformation is more of a journey that a company embarks on. Okay. And we have to look at the path that will take us on that journey. And to understand the path, let's start looking at the landscape and how the landscape has transformed in the last 300 to 400 years. And we are all familiar with the term of Industry 4.0, Pharma 4.0. And when we hear these words, I'm sure people are asking themselves, geez, what is Pharma 1.0? What is Pharma 2.0? What is 3.0? What's 4.0? Well, let's try to see where we are headed by beginning with Industry 1.0. And Industry 1.0, it would be safe to assume that around the 1750s is Industry 1.0. What was it then? Take the example of the printing press. Take the example of the weaving machine, where you made textiles. These were machines that needed constant human action to interact with the machine. Somebody sitting with the foot on the pedal on a weaving press, where the things are being woven. And then same with the printing press, after all the typesetting, and there was some human doing this and printing the pages. And that then transformed into Industry 2.0 with the invention of energy, such as steam power. When the energy came in, that removed the involvement of manual energy, and then we had power, steam power, then of course electrical power. And these machines, then you had the concept of horsepower, 500 human beings. It's a 500 horsepower engine. And along with the power came portable power, like we see in locomotives. The power is moving along with the machines. Then now this is a very, very important Industry 3.0. It came around 1970 with the introduction of the microprocessor. And that's from here on out starts the digitalization. So the microprocessor involved automation. Everything, people were trying to automate and trying to remove the human element further and further and further and bringing in the electronics. So you had the PLCs, you had the DCSs, automated all the process steps. And then came Industry 4.0 around the time of 1980-85 with the communication chip, when we started this whole business of big digitalization, where we could do mobile computing, where we could distribute services out through the cloud. And that is where we are today, Industry 4.0. So let's not mix up digitalization with automation. Automation came with Industry 3.0, but then that expanded with digitalization, Industry 4.0. So that is the transformation. And we will talk about how we get there. And we don't know what lies ahead, but we know there is excitement ahead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Chinmoy, thank you first off for the brief history and clarifying the journey through the industry innovations and how we got to not only Industry 4.0, but Pharma 4.0. And we'll see there's a little bit of difference there. But as we encounter increasing pressure, as an industry to accelerate innovation, optimize production, we still need to comply with regulators. How do we open the door to new and emerging technologies?
Yes, that's we have to look at the management. Okay, management in the biopharma industry is one of the very challenging jobs, because it is the CEO's business to balance the interest of the patient against those of the investors. Okay, they have to make the call and they have to balance it. You can't say we can't release the product because of these how serious are these flaws, and can we go and get out something else 6 months later? So, and we can see that, all the vaccines that are coming out, they're improving over time. So, and then you have the investors. So the CEO and the executive management has to articulate that vision to the investors to keep them involved. Okay, and they need to tell the investors, yes, we are getting into the frontiers of manufacturing. We are getting into digitalization. We know there are risks involved, but we are going to take informed risks. We have a backup plan in case, things are not working in a timely fashion because we are adopting a new technology. Investors stay involved. The rewards are very high in the future. So that is the key to a good management, is the management believes very seriously in digitalization, knows very well that there will be some pitfalls, and they plan for those, how to walk back, but continues in that effort to move ahead. So in short, what they need to do is that they should articulate a vision for digitalization that opens the doors to these new and emerging technologies. They should effectively communicate that vision to the investors so that they continue to remain involved. Because if investors walk away, you have no money, then we might as well shut our doors too as biopharma folks. And then manage the risks, not avoid them. That's the key. Don't avoid risks, take risks and manage it, meaning know the pitfalls, know how to get around those pitfalls and reach your ultimate goal. So that's how you can open the door to the new and emerging technologies.
Excellent. And obviously there's so much more to it, but I do love that you started with the executive management team has to make it a priority to move in that direction, to embrace technologies, to commit to changing over maybe legacy systems to something newer and more capable. I think when you start there and then get the investors on board, hopefully we'll see that continued acceleration, not just in the digitalization like we've seen in the last 18 to 20 months, but really that transformation that we're talking about today. And Chinmoy, I'm thinking about 4 buckets of digital transformation. Technology being one, the data being a second, the processes, and then something you just alluded to, which is the organizational change. So getting not only the management, but the entire team to buy in. Yeah. What are some key digitalization efforts that organizations can begin with in each one of these buckets? If we want to keep moving forward and embrace this, digital transformation, I think we need to think through all of these, where all the challenges are in each of these areas.
Stacey, you have already taken the first steps by identifying these buckets. So, I hope the CEOs also identify these buckets very well. And of course, being a CEO, they are fully empowered to address the organizational side right away. So the CEO and the executive team, of course, they need to believe in it very strongly. And to believe in it, they also need to be aware of the pitfalls. It's not a path laden with gold. But the critical thing here is to designate an executive sponsor for this digitalization effort. It does not have to be a person who is a digitalization guru. No, the executive sponsor is the one who will get the people together that the CEO and the executive management will stand behind and allocate the necessary funding and the resources. And then the executive sponsor will take it down to the project team. So typically what happens is they say, okay, let's go in for a conceptual design. Okay, the conceptual design phase, not preliminary, not detailed, not execution, but a conceptual design. And then the executive sponsor also forms his or her own team, which is a team of outside experts, real top level outside experts. And they're high priced because, they bring a lot of value. And then they identify project managers in these 3 or 4 areas that you mentioned. And this team of project managers then form their own teams to go and assess what they have currently by way of resources, by way of infrastructure, by way of all the computing resources they have, desktop computers, even the service desk and everything. So they have to identify what they have, where they want to be, and hence what the gaps are and how to get there. And that forms the basis of the conceptual design. Of course, along with it, they have to put some numbers also for the executive management to decide and set priorities after that. And after that, when they set the priorities, when they decide on the steps they have to go, the path they have to take, they start the project, and then they tell the executive sponsor, here you go. Let's go and achieve stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And that's how I think should start off a company in a digitalization state. Whether they are already 50% there and they are on a journey that they want to complete the remaining 50%, they can follow the same path that I laid out.
Yeah, it really makes sense to have one individual person sort of spearhead that whole effort and keep the entire team on task, act sort of as a mediary between the upper management and the product teams, so that information is disseminated correctly. I mean, I like that approach. I think that offers some cohesiveness to both sides and allows one point person to constantly keep it moving forward. Because we all know we can plan, the best of us can plan, but sometimes those plans can get lost or we get sidetracked along the way when other things, other priorities emerge. And just one follow on to that, Chinmoy, because you did talk about phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And of course, what those look like will differ depending on the organization and where their starting point is. And I'm just curious how you see company leaders or even this individual point person assess which digital transformation initiatives would best fit their organization's activities, today, and then, of course, tomorrow.
Yes, there are several ways. You're actually asking a question of about what we say is risk management, which is you look at the compliance risk. If we don't do something today, this bolus of project, do we put ourselves in a compliance risk? Do we put ourselves in a GXP risks? Do we put ourselves in a business risk? These are the three things you have to look at. Yeah, we should not forget even the business risk. Okay, we have our investors out there. That's a key thing. And that's what is very important. So we have to go through that. And again, the executive management may again send the whole thing back to the company employees through the executive sponsor and say, let's also do some risk assessment. You have given us the budget, all right. That's very good. Please go back for another 2 weeks and tell them to assess all these risks and come up with a scorecard so that we can decide which one we take things up first. So that's also very critical. So leadership has a very, very big role all through in this digitalization process.
It sounds like there's a lot on their shoulders for sure. And understanding that leadership, needs to be the biggest cheerleader here. They need to be the one that gets behind the initiatives, not just in name, but in actions, right? Because the speed of the leader is the speed of the group. I have seen time and time again in my business journey. But how important is company leadership and developing the right culture to a successful digital transformation, to the actual deployment of the digital transformation strategy or plan?
Good. Very good question. Yes, again, we keep to leadership. And as you know, I have been also involved a lot with data integrity. That has been the recent focus of all the regulatory audits.
Right.
And no matter what we talk about access control and all that, leadership is the key, because leadership develops the culture in the company. And it is not giving lectures. It's not just talking about what the employees should do, but they should themselves be the models and exemplify such a culture. And if you read some of these management books, they tell you it's the 5V model of leadership. And what's the 5V model? The first one is vision. They need to have a very good vision. They need to have very good communication skills to articulate that vision, even to the lowest level employee on the floor. Mm-hmm. Because they all need to know what is it we as a company do, why we do it, what are the implications of not doing it in a correct fashion, who are the people that suffer, and make that person important in what that person does, whether it is even cleaning the toilets after office to mixing drugs to form the drug. So leadership's vision capability should be very clear and communicated. Okay. Then, as you know, they also have to build up the values in the company, the second V. And the values are very important. There are people you will see that they have one set of values at home, but when they get into crowds along with the peers, their values change. They tell their kids, hey, don't lie, don't cheat. They go home and tell their kids, you should not lie, you should not. But then under peer pressure in the workplace, they start fudging data, lying, because that's the culture in that place. So the values should be developed. And the values of honesty, the values of speaking up, and that is also very important. Now, the next role is visibility. Management by walking. You need to be out on the floor, not to check on people, whether they are doing or they are bluffing, but also being that coach, but also being interested. I work for a boss who was like 8 to 8:30, just come into my office. and we would drink our coffee and discuss anything and everything that's going on. And then my boss would come out and start walking the floor and meet the people that showed interest, and people would be enthused. Wow, my boss is taking interest in my work. So
yeah, and it makes them accessible too. If there's questions, or I mean, could be process related or not, product related, who knows? But just being accessible, I think, is so important, and really getting your teams to have that shared interest, have
correct.
that shared effort.
Correct. So that fourth V is voice. That's the one. Leadership should encourage voice. It should not be a one-way communication from the top leadership down below. It should also be the art of listening. When you do management by walking, you go to that person's workplace and solicit inputs from them, their opinions, their behaviors, the same thing that you talked about. Accessible, correct. You don't have to knock on the door to get in there. You are there for them at the place of work where they are more comfortable expressing their opinions to you, and not in your office. And the last one is vigilance. Vigilance is, I'm not using it in a bad way. I'm saying, okay, have some measure, have a criteria to measure the progress. Leaders, you are following a policy, you have a style, you have created values. How do you know these are effective and that it is taking the company towards its goal and objective if you don't have a set of criteria to measure the progress? That is how I use the word vigilance. Be alive. Don't just send it out there and sit back and say it is working. How do you know it is working or not working?
Right.
So
absolutely.
That is vigilance. So that is what the leadership, if these 5 V's are there, they need not have any fear to take the risks of digitalization, which I normally see they do. But if they do these, success is theirs.
Well, that's a great way for management teams to kind of build their own little checklist, right? Make sure they're doing all of those things with their teams. I appreciate you bringing that to us. And I know you have a lot of experience, not only working in industry for pharmaceutical and medical device companies, but also as a consultant and really helping to get teams to take hard looks at what they're doing and when necessary, make changes. So I want to talk a little bit about, or have you share maybe some case studies or examples from both industry and consulting regarding the digital transformation that journey that you've been a part of, and what does that look like? Wonderful.
I'll be happy to. Sometimes people find it difficult to speak about themselves, but I look at it as, I'm at the end of my career, so I would like to share this so that the younger generation coming forward, can look forward to their future with hope. And of course, luck has favored me. So I entered the workforce in 1972 after graduating as an electrical engineer from the premier engineering school in India, the IITs. Many people have heard of that. But I liked working with my hands. And in those days, the idea of automation fascinated me because many people were doing, at least in India then, things people were doing manually. So right from day one, I jumped into automation, being an electrical engineer, instrumentation and control. And I was very lucky to work for a major company in those years, which is the Foxborough Company. And did a lot of, and those were the days of bellows. I mean, many few people may not know, but those were the days of bellows. It was all pneumatics. I used to go out as a service engineer, and people told me so many things. You want to go out and work in that hot sun, service engineer, you graduated from IIT. I said, no, you need to know what's going on down there. You need to experience it, work with your hands. And then, of course, being always on the move, I immigrated in 1976, did a large project for an iron ore using Foxborough. And I saw the digital transformation coming. So I came to the US and in 1978 and went back to school full time. I gave up a very good career, preparing myself for the future. Gave up my job full time and went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute to get my master's in computer science. I saw it coming. I said, no, you need to formalize it and not just pick it up. So I went, and luckily, right after master science, I jumped right back into the automation field and worked for big companies like Allen Bradley, worked for Siemens Industrial, Texas Instruments, and I loved programming. There were offers for management. I said, no, I want to do installation and commissioning. I want to see what's out there. And I was very lucky. I worked till I got my break in when was it? 1995, when the premier company then, Genentech, hired me and said, we are building this new greenfield facility. We need the most modern technology. It'll be 80 miles away from where you live. It'll be 80 miles away from our corporate office. Would you want to lead the effort for automation? And I said, sure, I will. So that's where I picked up all the knowledge. That's what brought me also into compliance as a subject matter expert. And I was very lucky. Now, you tell me about some of the successes, and boy, those are some wonders. And I remember I was programming when my days of Texas Instruments. You go to Central Valley, they do a lot of tomato processing. Dole manufacturing, Dole manufacturing is there too. And Texas Instruments was a high-tech company. They came up with this language called APT, Application Productivity Tool. It was a high-level language, and it compiled into the PLC program. PLC was a very esoteric language. And here I had the VP of manufacturing standing next to me, explaining to me how the tomato canning process works. And as he was explaining, I was programming in a flowchart language, and he got interested. He kicked me aside. He said, can I do this? I know what you're doing. I said, yes, please do. Made him a champion. He loved it. I told him, do you want to leave your job and do programming? He said, no, I want to train people, but I didn't know you people have made so much of advances. I said, sure. And he's a chemical engineer, knew nothing about automation. Okay, and then Kimberly-Clark, was another one. They make these huge toilet papers.
Right.
So we have to look at these things, and please give me a couple of minutes here. We have to look at these things. 1 year down the line, we had sold Texas Instruments, had sold all these PLCs, and we never competed in going and programming and installing them. We were vendors. We encouraged system integrators to do the work. So 1 year later, we got a call. Hey, your controllers here are not doing the task. We can't run the plant. It gets automatic resets, and the system integrator cannot make it run. So you people, the vendors, please send somebody here. So I went there, and it's not always software. It is not always hardware. It is the business process. And that's what people are telling me today on data integrity. Okay, it's not the people. You don't have to fire them. You have to set up a business process that is foolproof. So for 2 days, I was just watching, asking people questions, and the plant manager called my boss, says, take him away. He doesn't even know what he's doing because he's asking so many people so many questions. And then I had told him, can I meet the system integrator? And he said, no. They were angry at him. They threw him out. They said, no, we don't want him to come, his company, no more. And I said, okay, it's nothing wrong with the program. One small error maybe, but the way these people are working is the problem. Again, get back to digitalization. It is not digitalization. It is business process management. Look at that. So I met that person. I said, 1 year, this person has worked. He's a smart person. Maybe he's not doing one small thing right. They're not going to call him in. I had dinner with him. And he explained to me everything that he did. He saved that company so much time because it also. And then Stacey, I went in, and my boss called me at night. He says, they also want to throw you out. I said, what did you tell him? He said, I told him, if this guy can't solve it, we have nobody who can solve it. And that is the second point. Management should support you. And this is what my boss did. And that's the win. One small, I changed it. I knew what it was, but I didn't jump right in. And that's the key. Just look at the whole business process, not your program, not your hardware immediately.
I think that just, I mean, we hear that all the time in our industry. We are citing human error often as the cause of things that go wrong. And oftentimes it isn't the human error, it's the process error. And so when we step back and we really look at everything we're doing and dig deep to look for those true root causes, it usually comes back to there was a faulty process, or there was a step missing in the process, or things haven't been updated as you have gotten new equipment or upgraded software or whatever. So it's interesting to me that you discovered that 2 decades ago or whatever it was in your at Kimberly-Clark. So it shows you that as much as we've made strides forward, there's a lot of things that haven't really changed. We still need to go back to basics and sometimes and just really understand our business.
Correct. So and one last very quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
I also consult in India. There's a very large company out there called Dr. Reddy's Labs.
Yes,
They got the money. So I get this call, and this was before we shut down due to the pandemic in November 2019. Mm-hmm. I visited India in October. They called me. They said, we are thinking of buying this Valgenesis package, but we need to talk to you. Since you live in the US, you know what the... So somehow I convinced them, and they went and bought the package, and they installed it. Stacey, in March, I got a call from their VP IT thanking me, because he said, had we not bought this package, had we not bought the package that digitalizes validation, we would be way behind, because all our people are sitting at home and they are validating. Sitting at home, they are validating this, and a few of us, very few dispersed staff are out here working. They're sending the commands, but the validation is proceeding because of the digitalization they did.
Yes.
That's what he said. And, that
I believe it. It's the song of the pandemic.
Yes.
Remote work. We've seen remote work like never before, these last 2 years. So that's great news for Dr. Reddy's that they made that change and they were prepared.
Yes.
Not every organization can say that same thing, but I know everybody's working towards it as fast as they can, and looking at where we are. So we just talked about sort of the journey, some of the hurdles, some of the big successes in getting there for you in your career, and understanding that the processes are the processes. The processes may change, but understanding them. Understanding your own organization and being able to identify where there are errors is just as important today as it was 20 or 30 years ago. But still, some things are on the horizon for us, or just in the last, maybe decade of beginning to gain momentum, such as personalized medicine and new business models and changes in consumer attitudes and behaviors. They're all vital in shaping the future of pharma. And I'm curious on your thoughts about how we identify the technologies and capabilities today that are going to allow us to get there, next year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, whatever it is.
Yes. That's a very good segue into this flexible manufacturing because of personalized medicine, right? We know, I just read the other day, Pfizer is saying, the new Omicron, that within 2 months, they can have a new vaccine specifically tailored for the Omicron virus. And I've also listened to naysayers of the vaccine, and they're right too. They're saying vaccines take 4 or 5 years. How can they just bring it out in a year? And I'm telling myself, sir, madam, yes, you are right, 4 or 5 years. But those days are gone. Right. Now it is personalized medicine, bringing out medicine with new technologies. And we know the mRNA, it holds a very big potential for cures in the field of cancer and other areas. So you have to have this flexible manufacturing. You have to have personalized medicine, also personalized medicine for the virus, for things like the virus. They keep changing very fast, and you have to keep up pace with bringing out newer and newer drugs very quickly. And we have also made intense progress in viral vector manufacturing.
Mhm.
Those days are gone. Now you hear a lot about viral vector manufacturing. That's what Pfizer and Moderna or whoever is going to do. They are going to change the vector, the virus vector. So, so the FDA is keeping up with it too. There is a lot, Congress has given them a lot of money to help companies to go in for flexible manufacturing. And to me, I read a lot, and the furthest I can think of is when then FDA Commissioner Dr. Janet Woodcock said the FDA's vision of the 21st century. And I just want to quote her, and she says that FDA sees the system that they have, regulatory system, to be, and here she is, maximally efficient, agile. She used the word agile in 2000. Maximally efficient, agile, flexible pharmaceutical manufacturing sector that can reliably produce high quality drugs without extensive regulatory oversight. I just quoted her. So you see how far FDA has that vision.
Right. 20
Compliance
years
is
ago,
there.
right?
Yeah, compliance is there when you want them, and they are ready. And if we all saw Dr. Hahn, who was the commissioner, coming on these press conferences along with President Trump. He is one of the biggest supporters of flexible manufacturing. He is actually chairing and continues to work with these people to come up with regulations that will, support flexible manufacturing. So that is what I would say that we start to look at, and instead of standardization, we start looking at common platforms. We are a world community. We all don't speak the same language. We speak different languages, but these are all common platforms, and the same thing can happen in the digital world. Standardization.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So sticking with that for a moment, what platforms have you found to be superior in industry that, if we all should be using the same or similar platforms, have you identified some that are superior to others currently?
Yeah, what I'm seeing is that, about if you had asked me this question 10 years back or 15 years back, and, there were all sorts of, there was Unix, there was Linux, there was Windows, and all sorts of things in between that, and even within Unix, there were different flavors, the
Right.
Berkeley flavor. But on the desktops and others, even Apple is fading away, at least in the industrial world. People have started, and Microsoft has kept up. Microsoft is becoming the de facto standard, with their server policies. But there is another very interesting thing going on here, and that's the cloud. The cloud is providing, and we can look at cloud. We'll talk about cloud as to how things are changing, collaborative compute. So the cloud has provided that glue, the common platform. The SaaS vendors are writing software packages to run on a cloud system. And even within the cloud, people are gravitating towards either Azure, AWS, and then, there are a few smaller, a bit specialized cloud companies, but they are all gravitating towards the cloud technology.
Right.
And how is cloud helping us? Cloud is now helping us to focus on our core competencies. Those days are gone. I told you, when I worked at Genentech, we refocused ourselves not into writing homegrown software. That, you had to maintain a whole team trying to support that homegrown software. And our CEO always told us, we are not a software company. We manufacture drugs, we research drugs, and we distribute those drugs. So let us outsource. And what is helping that today? The cloud. We outsource, tasks and services to companies whose core competencies are in the areas where we as drug manufacturers don't possess. And let us focus on our core competencies. Now, that is becoming a common trend instead of unified platforms. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing. That's what we are calling digitalization, true digitalization. They're talking about validation 4.0. They are talking about quality 4.0. What does it all mean? They're all supporting services to the main task of manufacturing drugs,
Right.
but from different companies.
Absolutely. And the vendors are very important to that, especially the SaaS vendors, as is the cloud, as you just mentioned, highly important in this digital transformation process. And I'm just thinking about, we were talking about personalized medicine, and really that is all dependent, being able to move, being agile, as the FDA agent spoke of 20 years ago, is somewhat now reliant on AI and machine learning, and being able to parse data, huge amounts of data very quickly. And that's what's allowed us as an industry to produce these vaccines faster and more accurately than ever before. And thinking about the flexible manufacturing, I wonder what kinds of valuable predictive qualities within the manufacturing facility can be achieved through, AI in validation, in data collection, data management. Can you talk us through some of that?
Yes, certainly. AI during the days, and even today, during the days I went back to school to get my degree in computer science, we were looking, in the academia was looking at AI very seriously. Now that's in the 80s. And in those days, we had things called auto-tune PID algorithms. Mm-hmm. You can say it was some kind of an AI in there, because you knew the algorithm, you knew the relationship, the process dynamics to tune a process loop. So you knew the algorithm, and you could write software. So you could say AI, but a true AI is neural networks, which is self-learning. And I think we are not there yet. Scientists are still trying to figure out the complexity of human intellect. How does it work, and how we can emulate that, or how we can simulate that in the computing world. But what the industry has done, they have proceeded on their own, aided by the research that we see. They have proceeded on their own to use AI. And where do we see that? Today there is a big focus, because of the drug shortage. There's a big focus on real-time release of drugs, right? And the project that I was involved with at Genentech, we implemented then in the late 90s, was we wrote an algorithm. We developed it in-house. We followed the alarms, we followed the excursions. And then in the end, when the product was ready, it took us about half an hour to 1 hour to release the drug. It was not it was the quality department that said, wow, this is what we do. I said, yes, we have been talking to you. We have been capturing your knowledge. And that is why this is a big advancement, even in knowledge engineering. That is what is helping us. You Absolutely. See, if you see ISPE and the other professional groups, they are devoting a lot of time. And you see all those engineers coming from different companies, pharma companies. They were talking about knowledge engineering 2-3 years ago, and that has matured. Then we have the software engineering, software science in all these techniques, object-oriented programming. That has matured. They're all coming together. And we are calling it the AI because even the hardware side has, fast processing, intense and fast processing.
Right.
A very good distribution of data that also takes care of cybersecurity. The cybersecurity is a big issue now. So all these are now coalescing. They're coming together to rightfully for the industry to claim we are using AI. And good enough. We should not wait for the researchers and academia to tell us what is AI while they try to figure out how the human intellect works. So that's
Absolutely.
what I would say.
And Chinmoy, I'm thinking just, in companies, obviously we are progressing with our technologies, digital technologies, AI, et cetera. But we still, in a lot of instances, work in teams, and those teams are based in departments or on tasks. And I see that there's still a lot of organizations who work in silos, and their teams are not necessarily interacting with each other as much as I would say would be necessary to be effective, be efficient, and move quickly as some of these digital technologies are allowing us to do. So as we continue this progression, what platforms exist currently to assist teams more quickly, more effectively collaborate with each other, breaking down these silos and just making it a more seamless process, I guess.
Good. So, continuing the thought that I mentioned earlier, that there is a lot of effort undergoing to establish standards of data exchange. So there is something called DISA, which is Data Interchange Standards Association, and they support various organizations to come up with common standards for data interchange. Okay, they are not saying, oh, well, you should only buy Dell computers, or you should only buy these computers. They are saying, write programs, the format of data interchange. Then, I remember in the earlier days, we had OPC. We still have OPC format, amongst process control equipments. And that is the OPC Foundation. There is a foundation that is developing the standards as information technology, progresses and advances with new hardware and all that. And also notice the trend. I like to look at the trend. Who was promoted to the IBM CEO? Today, it's Mr. Krishna. Where did he come from? He was heading the cloud division of IBM. Who was promoted to the CEO of Microsoft? Mr. Satya Nadella. Where did he come from? He was heading the cloud division of Microsoft before he became CEO. Recently, we had Amazon, of all things. When has Amazon been a high-tech company? We always think of Amazon books and, dropping things by our door. But who succeeded the original founder today is Mr. Andy Jassy. And who is he? He's the one that founded the AWS in Amazon. Mm-hmm. He founded the cloud business.
Right. And so many of us are using AWS in our own businesses now.
Correct. So where do you think, the investors are thinking about all this? They know they're putting money into the cloud. They are promoting people from the cloud background. And that is where we are headed, in a common standard, common platform, data interchange. And of course, there is a lot of work also going on in cybersecurity, including the guidance that FDA issued for devices. So there also, regulation side, there's a lot of work going on. So,
yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned regulations, because as we talk about cloud management, cybersecurity, computer systems, the potential that introduces new risk to our business in a lot of instances. And of course, whenever we think about risk, we also think about compliance and quality. And I'm just wondering, how will compliance efforts change as a result of all of these digital transformation efforts? And does this pose, an even bigger problem for manufacturers still working with legacy systems?
Correct. Now, I have been very impressed with the FDA and how they have kept up. I even interact quite a lot with some of the existing and former FDA regulators. And I've been very impressed with how they have kept up with the changes in the industry. way back in 1990, they recognized the electronics, or I call it the term electronization of the industry was coming, is when they started thinking of 21 CFR Part 11 for electronic records. And then that got extended into the aeronautics industry, into the other places. But they were thinking, hey, it's coming. And in 1997, they issued their first regulation on Part 11. So they have kept up with the regulations. They have now all come together also worldwide as regulatory agencies. And right now, today, we started talking about data integrity. And when we at ISPE looked at this, what is this data integrity? We looked at the regulations that they had set way back in 1990s, late 80s. All the data integrity phrases and verbs were sitting in there. And we said, wow, they were thinking about data integrity then, but what happened? Industry has neglected it. And then it came in front of the radar. Mr. Stan Woolen was the first. He was then a FDA inspector in 1992. He was the first to use the term ALGOA. And I would like to think he probably read those regulations already and picked out those words and said, hey, it's all here. So they have kept up. They have had the foresight. Today we are all talking about CSA, computer software assurance. And we used, when I was in Genentech in the late 90s, we did CSA. We didn't call it that. We did risk assessment. We didn't call it that. We looked at NFL football coaches who used to do risk assessment before a game, and they would formulate their strategy on how to face the opposition. So regulators are keeping up. They're talking about CSA. They're elevating it. The regulations of CSA are there in 211.68a. It's not new. Only thing, they have not been enforcing it. But they are going to start enforcing it. And I would tell the listeners, please read up, Part 211.68a. It is there that you have to validate. The word is satisfactorily. You have to satisfy yourself that you have validated it. And how do you satisfy? Not through documentation, through critical thinking. So, so that's for regulations. They are keeping up. They are one step ahead, I think.
And what do you see in terms of teams, in internal teams? Are they keeping up?
Yes, we have to shift in paradigm. And I'm seeing that shift happen. Is we are moving our focus FDA's case for quality, right? The case for quality, which I think they started talking in 2011, 2012, CDRH is one of the teams in front there from the FDA that are pushing for that. And the case for quality itself is pushing for subject matter experts instead of a biochemist looking at quality of software. That's not the background that person had. Neither can you take a software person looking at quality of research or quality of manufacturing on the floor and doing batch release. What does that person know? So, and they are flagging all these things. The auditors are flagging it and saying they need access to the data only in the areas that they have expertise in and not to other, background and experience. These are the phrases they are using. So that's what the team, now they are focusing more and more in their area of expertise and not everywhere.
Excellent. So Chinmoy, we've covered a lot today, not only some historical information, but also some, very current things like cloud management, cybersecurity. And it's a lot for industry folks to take in and disseminate, what are some next steps for me? So what advice would you give to an industry leader who's trying to navigate a path forward in their digital transformation journey?
Yes. So, I would say, there are a few steps you need to follow. One of them is review your business end to end. Okay. Take a holistic approach of your business. Review it. You have a vision, Mr. Executive Management. You have a vision. you know what you have, you can identify the gaps, and then the next step is ensure that you have the staff that are digitally fluent, because you need to address those gaps, and you just can't bring in people who don't have the background, who are not digitally fluent,
Hmm.
and have the background to actually address those. Stacey, I'll give you an example from my personal life. I have a 34-year-old, and we got this sandwich franchise, and we were rebuilding everything inside. And I asked my son, "Hey, how about putting up a clock there?" He says, "Dad, this is how the younger generation, whom we say, well, they don't know much, but we have to rely on them." He said, "Dad, you are setting up an free internet access for customers who come in. And they all have iPhones, right? They all have cell phones. You think they don't have a clock on that cell phone? They would be looking at your wall."
He's right.
And he's right. There
Yeah.
are many out there from that generation. Their way of thinking is very different.
Right.
So I would, any management, hire those people. I can go on for having set up a data integrity program. And when the IT VP asked me, "Who do you think the team should be?" I said, "Take the person who is fresh out of college." "Really?" I said, "Yes. You know it, you're going to guide them.
Yeah.
Why do you want experienced people?"
They're digital
So
natives. They've grown
they
up
are
with it their entire life, and it's not, there's nothing that seems to stump them when it comes to technology. I mean, they understand it so well.
they
The
can get on it
capabilities.
right away. Give them the problem, they can get on it right away. They have the ability to dig. They don't have preformed notions. They're fresh out of college, 2 3 years,
Yeah.
and the experience is you. I mean, the VP, your senior directors, they will guide them. They'll go look at this, go produce a report. And he did. So that's what I would tell everybody, that ensure that the people are digitally fluent, that they are not only know how to code, but they're even thinking in those terms. Where my son said, you want to put up a clock on the wall, and you're putting up an internet where they can see it on their phone. So they'll just whip out a phone and look at the time there. They won't
Right.
look at the wall. They can see in
Exactly.
the car. They can't see your watch from the car. so so that's what I would tell them. Please be sensitive to what you are doing, the younger generation, the upcoming generation, and think, as Steve Jobs says, think different, not think differently, but think different. There's a slight change between think differently and think different. So
Absolutely.
that's innovation. Yeah.
Innovation. I love it.
Yes.
That's our theme for the year here at IVT.
Innovation. That's what is in Silicon Valley. I am coming to you from Silicon Valley. I live
Yes,
there.
I know you are, and I appreciate your thoughts, Chinmoy. It's been such a pleasure having you here as our guest today and sharing all of your insights. Before we close out, any last thoughts you want to leave with our audience today?
Sure. I I would tell people planning the digitalization. I mean, it is a tough job, but have faith in yourself, because that's all that you need to face any toughness. We have had great people. They have become great by encountering something that is very tough, and they have won it. Is first, believe in yourself, have faith. Okay, be always alert, think dynamic, form a good team, form good people. And I would like to, when you talk about innovation, I always think about Yogi Berra. I mean, he had a way of conveying the message. He said, "The future ain't what it used to be." So that is, the future is digitalization. It ain't what it used to be. Like my son pointed out to me, it's not that. It's different now. Now, it is also not for the faint-hearted. Okay, you have to make decisions. You have to do proper analysis. You have to, you meaning management, the entire team, you have all the options in front, and you have to choose the right option. And that famous word again of the yogi is that if you come to the fork in the road, take it.
Right.
Be decisive. You have all the options. That's a fork in the road. Take it. and take it, meaning be decisive. And always, you will face challenges, you will encounter failures, but you will also get successes. And I would tell all management, supervisory people, celebrate your success with the team. You know, it's not always work. We have to achieve. You will hit paths of success. Go out together as a team, celebrate success. And really the last thought, and that is my personal. When I was at Genentech, the greenfield plant was going to manufacture the drug called Herceptin. It was for the most aggressive form of breast cancer. From the time of detection to the time the person died, it was 5 months. It was that aggressive. Okay. So our CEO made the decision, and we said we will manufacture a greenfield not far away. And we did it. We brought the Herceptin out. People started using it. And we were always having patients, young mothers, grandmothers coming, telling their stories, crying out, thanking us on Christmas Day, on non-Christmas Day, because their cancer was in remission. And each one of them, many of them, not each one, many of them said, I'm sorry, my family could not be here with me today. And we had this all hands meeting when these patients came. I'm sorry, but they also said that they are very thankful to all of you because you didn't save my life, you saved theirs. Okay, so that's when we said, yes, we don't work for the FDA. We work for the patients because that's what we want to hear from the patients. FDA will come and give 483s, you lie, you cheat, you do that. But you enter that plant, hold high and work for the patient. And that's what we all do because that's what we hear. Family says, you didn't save my life, you saved their life. So that's all I have to share.
Excellent. I love that last sentiment. We do work for the patient in this industry. Everything we do is to turn out the highest quality, most effective drugs and devices so that they can go on living their lives with the highest quality. So thank you for that, Chinmoy.
Welcome. Anytime. Thanks very much for inviting me. I enjoyed it. Your questions were excellent.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
really appreciate you being here. Once again, Chinmoy Roy, really appreciate the case studies and insights on this topic. They were extremely valuable.
Thank you.
I also want to give a shout out to our producer, Ben Kitchen. And most importantly, I'm sending out my thanks to you, our valued listeners. I really appreciate your time each week, as well as your help in sharing this podcast. And we love